So guys, I want to do this last video about the 48 Hour Film Project. And I know that I posted it like a few years ago, my traumatic experience when I did the 48 Hour Film Project. And I just want to like talk about it again, like one more time, the things that I learned. So what happened was I've had ups and downs with the 48 Hour Film Project. And I participated from 2014 all the way until 2018. And after that, I've kind of thought about like kind of coming back and doing like a bit of a relaunch. So the issue was that sometimes when I've turned in a film, they'll play my film out of order. I remember like one time I did it for Singapore, and they said something like, you know what, my film was too long because of the credits, and then they emailed me back and they said, oh, well, we made a mistake. We disqualified your film by mistake. We all make mistakes, really. And then I did it for another city, and I remember I had a bunch of issues with the city producer and what happened during that event, and that's what it's mainly about, really. Like the first year I did it, and I'm just gonna like, not say the name of the city. So the city that I had an issue with, the first year that I did it, some of the city producers' friends were pointing their finger at me and saying, hey, it's great that a black man's doing our competition. Somebody made a racist comment to me, like saying, why do you want to, why don't you want to work with me? Is that blacks want to work with blacks? The film that I turned in showed that I was very much an amateur. So I remember like when they played my film, someone was like saying, huh, what? This is wrong, that's wrong. And then I actually turned over and it was actually the event runner. And my film was nominated for an award, and then what happened was that the city producer said whatever film Byron created, and they were acting really, really snarky, and then actually it was a child acting award, and the mother of the winner actually talked to me, and she was like saying things like, you should have won, this is ridiculous, and then I just mouthed off, really, and then the city producer heard it, they looked disgusted, and then they sent me an email about what was wrong with my film, and they ended with the remark, I'm just saying. I reported that to Mark Rupert. He ignored me for many, he ignored me completely. And then a few months later, I won some awards in Belgium, and then I told the city producer, I'm changing, I'm growing. I won some awards, and they had a very snarky attitude. And then the following year, I registered for their competition in 2016. And what happened was they put up a post on Facebook saying that they're happy to have me come back, really. And then they sent me an email saying, Byron, I hope you don't go around telling Mark Rupert you should win the whole competition. I hope you learn winnings and everything. I hope you appreciate my hard work. I'm creating a fun competition. Like, really just, put me on a pedestal, but you're an ultimately sore loser. And some of these things are gaslighting and accurate. I asked a question about special effects. They accused me of cheating. And then, by the way, the following year, what happened was there was a film where somebody won for special effects. They confessed to cheating. They were allowed to keep their special effects award. And then what happened in 2016 was that I shared to an audience that I was struggling with suicide and depression, and I'm using those hurtful emotions of that pain to actually influence my filmmaking. The city producer had like a look in their face, like, they were kind of like very like anticipating me messing up. They were snickering, making sarcastic gasping sounds, playing on their phone. Some people were yelling at me to shut up, really, and they really looked at me like as a special needs type of person sharing too much. I did it for the following year, and I had a filmmaker that pretended to be my friend for about a year, really, and he took some of my ideas. He made a film, and the city producer was like, like doing this. And this guy was like kind of snickering and making faces at me as well while he was like, holding thumbs ups with taking my ideas, really. And then I remember like after that, for many years, I struggled with depression, suicidal thoughts because of this. Wanting to be a filmmaker, not wanting to be a filmmaker. It gave me PTSD for like about 11 years. I tried to even make peace with the city producer, but also try to talk about what happened. They put me in a probationary period. And during that probationary period, the city producer told another city producer inaccurate things, and it almost got me in trouble with somebody. It almost got me into a lot of trouble, really, in some different areas. Mark didn't really do anything about it, about the city producer just lying to another city producer to get me into trouble, really. And then the city producer that had an issue with denied that she did anything wrong. And then the other thing that happened was like a few years after this, the city producer had to step down because they had a controversy at City Hall regarding workplace bullying, making discriminatory remarks, taking couples that were trying to get married in an asylum city, and reporting to the federal government, taking some bribes, like saying, hey, you guys have to pay a little extra, keeping the money, and running happy hunting on their paperwork, and then smiling for the cameras. And then there's a story in one of the papers that when she got fired, when she stepped down her last day of work, she was creating a big spectacle and saying, things like, like, I did nothing wrong, really. So almost like some things that I've experienced, was similar to that situation, really. And then also, she won a Lifetime Achievement Award like a couple months after that, really, so. And I've actually known people who have stopped doing the 40-hour film project for this city because they know about the controversy that happened, really. And they say, like, she's a piece of shit, and for just, like, extorting people or whatever, really. So it did teach me a lot of things, and I think that the big issue that I've had in my psyche, really, is... sorry, guys. And I think that the big issue I've had in my psyche was ultimately that, why did I blow up on stage? Where am I as a filmmaker, and who do I want to be as a filmmaker? And I really want to start with who I want to be as a filmmaker. That my ultimate goal was to use the 40-hour film project to talk about a traumatic experience that happened to me, like turn that into a film and build my film skills. And I felt with the 40-hour film project that met a lot of people who thought that I was autistic or special needs, or that maybe on the autism spectrum. So unfortunately, I met many people who thought they can say racist things to my face, really. It's almost like you watch the film Flowers for Algernon, with how they treat the mentally ill character like he's stupid, except it's white people making racist comments to me, or people lying to my face about disciplinary actions, or trying to manipulate other people to get me into further trouble, really. So, that's definitely a concern, really. And that hurt me for a long time, because I'm sick and tired of being in that role of, well, people can talk about my skin color, or people can be like, oh, well, maybe you don't look people in the eyes, or maybe you're a little, like, off a little bit. Disregard that I've been through a lot of traumatic experiences, and be like, oh, well, I can take advantage of you and treat you whatever type of way, really, And then also, like I've said, I have a friend named Juri who is a Japanese American woman, and she married a Nigerian man, really. So what happens when her children do the 40-hour film project? What happens if her children want to be actors? What would happen if her children want to be directors one day, and people are saying things like, oh, well, and it's great that blacks are doing this and other things like that, Juri Love is well known in the film community, but if her kids, who are not really that well known, just came out and did that, what would the response be? It's not good, really. I dealt with racial harassment, and also I mentioned this many times to the higher ups, and they did nothing about it, really. They always had the attitude either ignoring or we're eventually going to get to it. So it hurt me a lot because I didn't want to be in that role of, well, people think that you're so special needs that you can be disrespected in public, or people can talk about my skin color, or people can be like, oh, well, maybe you're so mentally ill that if I say something racist or passive-aggressive racism, it's not going to matter, really. So I've kind of learned, that I want to just, be the filmmaker that I want to be, like, write about stories and other things like that and go as far as I want to. But I have no problem, that's one reason why I have a YouTube channel about speaking out against injustices. And I think the other big part of it is accountability on the 40-hour film project side and my side. And I want to talk about my side at the very end of this. But I really think the 48, it's always been advertised as a competition that's supposed to bring anybody in, really encourage the idea that anybody can be a filmmaker, and just anybody can come into a nurturing environment. And unfortunately, that was not my case, really. Again, the first time you walk into a city, people are talking about you being the only nigger and in that group, really. I'll use that word because that's how I felt, really. And then the following year, I had a friend named J.V. Harvey, and he was a very dark-skinned black man. He did a lot of civil rights stuff, and he would, people knew not to talk to him like that way, really. So it is kind of that thing, too, about, it's bad when that happens, really. It's also very bad and very telling when you bring that up to higher-ups and they do nothing about it. And it's also very telling when you brought up consistent, harassment or being told wrong information or manipulation, and you're asked to show emails to higher ups of how sleep producers are treating you, and they say it's miscommunication when it's actually just cyberbullying. And then also at the very end of it, the sleep producer who's been doing this, they give a lifetime achievement award. And even though there's news articles and other information out there about their behavior, really, that's a person you put on a pedestal, get the fuck out of there. And then they also have one of the higher ups, one of the highest persons actually giving, her that award, really, get the fuck out of here. Like, what's that, really? I used to work at Southern, and there was this man named Barry who got fired for sexual harassment. And imagine if the governor of Connecticut went down and gave him like an award because he's also a hard worker, really. It's the same exact thing, Somebody associated with a really big controversy and around prejudice, around workplace bullying, around just, hustling in state jobs and using their power, really, and you're giving them awards and whatever, really. And the highest person in that 48 is actually going down and giving something in person, really, despite all this controversy. It's very, very telling. So they made a lot of bad choices to do ill will. They made a lot of bad choices to be like, hey, you know what? Even though I participated in their competition 16 times, made 16 shorts, and then I volunteered over 50 times, and I've done a lot of, goodwill and saying things like, hey, you know what? Maybe I can go to the New York City competition, ride a helicopter with my and bring my camera along, and then just do some behind the scenes footage, or do some trailer footage by like helicopter or other things like that. Like, there's a lot of things that I could have done for the 48, but ultimately it's this thing too where they want to push away people that are not in their clique and whatever, and it's unfortunate that they do that. And I think the big part, and I promised myself I don't want to make this video any more than 20 minutes to talk about the things that I've learned. That I learned a lot, really. That, when I was younger, I was very, animated. I was very insecure. And I was very, over celebrating my work, really, So I remember, how I'd always share my work to people on Facebook and whatever. And sometimes I'd do, big message groups and send my stuff, really. So I learned, things about etiquette. I also learned the etiquette of not always talking about awards or hoping that I win awards or being when are the award results happening. Then I also learned a lot about, what happens when we speak publicly about competitions and film festivals that have controversies, or we do some whistleblowing. That's never good to go back, really, because it's not because they may say, hey, you know what, we'll treat you fair. I promise as a president of the competition to treat you fairly, or you'll be treated fairly. They're not going to... they're going to just take you for stupid, really. And then I also learned other things about, human nature and things like that as well, really. About, how, people can be very, very mean. And, it's filmmaking. Everybody gets taken advantage of. There's a lot of film sets where I live where they don't pay actors. Where it's just it's pizza and a soda or whatever they're serving in catering, or... a lot of just people trying to break up relationships, or a lot of people just trying to feel powerful by ruining people, or people just saying, hey, that's the film business, because the film business has always been an industry of taking advantage, destroying people, saying, hey, you do this, you work with this person, you work with that person, oh, well, you're the mix, or you're the woman, you have to do these things, or, oh, well, you're the black guy, you have to do these things, you have to go down this path, really. Film has always been like that, so... it does surprise me that the 48 is an extension of those issues, really, So we always have to understand that, film is not a nice industry. So when you actually get hurt and betrayed and treated like trash, really, you have to say that's just part of the industry, but we have to be, a little bit more, resilient on that. And then the next thing I kind of learned is that, I'm older and I'm wiser, really. Like, I know who to trust, who not to trust. I was in my younger 20s. I went through PTSD. I was almost murdered by the police at a job that was robbed by its own security guards. I grew up with emotional abuse. I spent years around a relative with mental health issues that would sexually harass me. I had parents who didn't care about my suicidal thoughts and PTSD and depression. I worked with a therapist who had an attitude, suck it up, move on, ignore how people treat you. And I received severe workplace bullying, sexual harassment in many places, really. So I came with a lot of just, very complicated feelings. And I think every person in my life who was supposed to take care of me and help me out had the mentality of, I only care about your success and your results, not how you're struggling. And the best thing to do is just, take a deep breath and let all those feelings go past your toes and whatever, really. And like I've said in many videos, it kind of turns me into that role of work hard, and the respect and disrespect that I show matters, but the disrespect and respect people show me doesn't matter. Like, if people disrespect me, it doesn't matter, really. So, that was very hurtful and painful. But I also learned a lot about emotional intelligence. That, on one side, blowing up on stage because I was going through a hard time in my life. Like, my dad, Kevin Lembo, was running for governor of Connecticut. He did commercials inaccurately talking about my mental health issues, having pictures of me a little kid saying, oh, well, I'm black and I'm autistic when I'm not autistic, and other things like that. That really hurt me when he did that. That made me really angry. And then also that city producer had glasses similar to my father and had the same, like, piercing eyes, really. So I remember, like, almost seeing my father vicariously in this person, and then that's when I flipped out, really. So I learned, and then I was also talking and venting a lot because I was holding on to a lot of pain and hurt for many years. And I worked with, like, a bullshit therapist who was like, oh, well, the feelings have to come out somehow, or, wow, that must have been a spectacle, really, when actually you were saying things that could have gotten me, brought into a mental health professional or mental health hospital for a couple of days, really. So I learned a lot about how sometimes when we go through life, nobody's going to care about you more than you, really. And that includes family, that includes people in your passion, like filmmaking. And that also even includes, family. Like, when people are more going to be like, we don't want to be on that road of your life, really, until you're successful. When you're successful, we come into your life. But when you're struggling, we have no respect for you. And that's people who don't have respect for you in the first place. Like, I would know that there's this woman that I wanted to marry, and it was the same idea. She wanted me to focus on my career, and then maybe once I get rich and whatever, she'll come back in my life, but fuck her. Type of thing, really. So I learned a lot about managing my emotions. And I learned that, I'm older and wiser, and the past doesn't define me. Like, it's made me hurt and sad for many years. And then I also learned the other thing, too, that when people are mean to you, it says more about their psychology. Like, I've said before that people do get addicted to being mean to other people, really. And some people get addicted to seeing what they can get away with in life. So it's unfortunate that stems into the 40-hour film project. Like, I really think that through this video, I want to say that the bad things I've experienced, I've managed to overcome that. But I also want to say, too, that it's evidential that as a competition that really encourages embracing everybody and celebrating differences and bringing stories from different walks of life, it was definitely not like that, really. And then also, too, the fact that, I've mentioned many times about the racism I've dealt with and mental health discrimination, being played for stupid, and that happening right in front of the higher-ups and they did nothing about it says something, really. So I'm happy to make this video to say I've gotten past it, and I'll continue to get past it, but definitely, it was very unfortunate that, investing in a competition that's supposed to encourage people to make films and connect and embrace their community, it was a traumatizing experience, and I was treated differently because of the color of my skin, and they don't give a rat's ass about it.